Greetings everyone, hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Let's do another video today about Dark Envoy. This time I want to give you all the tips and tricks I can to make your playthrough as smooth as possible. There's a link below for my first impressions of the game if you haven't already seen that video. Before we get into the list, let me remind everyone that here at Slandered Gaming, we focus on RPGs and more specifically CRPGs. You can find builds, guides, and live streams for games like Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, Baldur's Gate 3, and Pillars of Eternity. If that kind of stuff interests you, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Alright, first off, I don't need to remind you guys to save, right? We're all RPG professionals at this point, and you know you should be saving constantly. With that out the way, my first tip is choose your class and specialization carefully. You can reset your attribute, class, and specialization points at any time, but the actual choice of what your class and specializations are is locked in forever. While you can choose a second specialization, this will only unlock a small portion of what the full option would provide. Therefore, it's very important you choose a playstyle that fits what you are looking for. All of them are great in their own way, so there's no bad choice. Just be sure to pick something you are comfortable with. Tip number 2, pay attention to the synergies. At the bottom of many skills, you'll be told about a synergy, which is an effect that is triggered when you use this skill against an enemy who has a specific debuff. For example, the engineer has a discharge spear which electrocutes a group of enemies and also confuses them. If you use this skill against enemies that are already confused, such as with Toxic Bomb from the Ranger class, then it will deal extra damage and also stun those enemies. There are combinations like this across all the different classes, and it's very important that you are aware of this information so you understand what is the most effective order that your team skills should be used. Tip number 3, be defensive. Everybody, regardless of their role on the team, should have at least one bailout skill that they can use when surrounded. Dark Envoy throws waves of enemies at you from all directions, and it's nearly impossible to shield soft targets from all the heat. Having a way to mitigate or avoid the brunt of that damage is absolutely mandatory. Tip number 4, do not ignore crafting and enchanting. Equipment can be looted in the field or purchased from stores, but most times it's crappier than what you'll be able to make yourself, and it won't be customized for your specific build. The game has a robust crafting and enchantment system that will really help your party get the leg up on enemies. For example, Ranger has a passive that gives you a 20% increase on damage against poison enemies. At first glance, this is only a little bit useful since there's not many attacks that poison enemies. It becomes extremely useful if you enchant your weapons to deal poison damage and automatically poison enemies. I've never found weapons on the field with this capability, but I was able to buy the enchantment schematic in a store, and now I can easily craft those weapons, significantly increasing my damage. Tip number 5, make sure you understand what the weapon skills do. The might and power attributes provide you with weapon skills. Each weapon has a skill associated with it, and they all do different things. These skills only have a cooldown. There is no mana cost, so it can be a great way to improve your action economy. Some of them are really useful, such as pistols, which provide the ricochet buff for 10 seconds, allowing your bullets to hit up to 2 additional enemies within 6 meters. You can see how this would be really powerful on a Poison Ranger build. Another great option is shields, which provide you with the shield bash skill. You'll dash and inflict knockdown on all enemies you hit, while also increasing armor by 30% and adding 100 to your magic shield for a limited duration of time. Definitely a great option for your tank. All of these skills have 3 levels, so if they are important to you, consider getting the attributes to ensure they are as powerful as possible. Tip number 6, pre-buff your party. In Dark Envoy, enemies are almost always out in the open, and the area where they can see you is outlined in red. This makes it very easy to stand right outside of where enemies can notice you. Take advantage of this by turning on any buffs or defensive powers that might be helpful, such as Wind Stance or Mana Shell. Tip number 7, purchase a rank in stealth. Oftentimes, an enemy's line of sight is far away from where the enemy is actually located, putting you in the position of alerting them before you are in position to do maximum damage. In the tactical category under research, there's a stealth option that will double the amount of time it takes enemies to detect you when you are in their line of sight. This will make it much easier to get your party members closer to the initial enemy group and then unload on them shortly before they realize you are there. This upgrade is also critical because most of the major boss fights in the game start with a conversation, and then when the conversation ends, your entire party is standing directly in front of the boss. With this upgrade, you'll have more time to pause and reposition vulnerable allies before the boss reacts to your presence. Tip number 8, start with crowd control. Every battle should start with all 4 characters using powers that help you control the field. My adept uses Freeze Spike because it can be cast from far away and it gives all enemies Frostbite. Then she can immediately follow up with Ice Bolts, which will freeze any frostbitten enemies. Leon starts with the Titan Robot, which will taunt nearby enemies and serve as a melee combatant, which none of my party members are. He will also follow up with a Gun Turret, which will provide additional ranged damage. Both of my ranges lay down Arrow Rain, which pummels an area with heavy fire. This ensures enemies cannot get past the front line without taking significant damage. Altogether, this will usually wipe out the first group of enemies and also prepares me to face the next wave of foes. My summons are set up, my rangers can focus on self buffs to use regular attacks, and my adept can use either Meteor Strike or Prismatic attacks, neither of which is reliable from a crowd control standpoint. Make sure you set up your own opening flow to help the rest of the fight go smoothly. Tip number 9, turn off the AI and manually control your party members. The AI for your party in combat sucks, but honestly, even if it didn't, your builds will oftentimes be too complicated for any sort of artificial intelligence to execute them competently. If I have a ranger set up with poison weapons who activates Ricochet, then for 10 seconds I don't want him doing anything but regular attacks, because they will rip through enemy groups. An AI would attempt to use skills as they become available, even if that's not the most effective action the ranger could take at that time. My adept is almost always in the middle of where the action is, which means I prioritize her defensive skills over and above anything else. There's no way to inform the AI I play this way, so it's just as likely to activate Mana Shell as it is Ice Bolts. Carefully construct builds that work and then commit to executing them yourself. Tip number 10, buy knowledge fragments and soul cores, but nothing else. Knowledge fragments allow you to research different boosts, which is very powerful. Soul cores are required to craft and enchant equipment, which is also very useful. Stores will sell you iron, but that is outclassed by other minerals later in the game, and it's not worth stocking up on it. They will also sell equipment, but the vast majority of it is inferior compared to what you would get from crafting similar items. Finally, stores will sell schematics for equipment or enchantments. For the most part, I would say you should avoid this as well, since more schematics are unlocked through research. But if you absolutely know you're going to use something that is available in the store, it might make sense to pick it up. It also appears that there are a few schematics which can only be bought. So again, if you see one that you would use, check the research list and make your own decision. By the way, if you want a detailed overview of how crafting works in the game, I reviewed that in my impressions video. That's all the tips I have for now to assist you with your Dark Envoy playthrough. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.